I never imagined I'd find myself in an all-out war with my homeowners association, but that's precisely what happened. It all started when I woke up one Saturday morning to the jarring sounds of car engines and slamming doors, right on my family farm, 7 a.m. on what was supposed to be a peaceful weekend, and my blood was already starting to simmer. You see, my grandpa, old Silas, built this farmhouse over 70 years ago, long before these McMansions sprouted up around it. I inherited this precious 10-acre farm 3 years back when he passed, and it's not just land to me, it's my heritage, my future, my everything. So there I was, still in my pajamas and a worn-out robe, rushing outside with my loyal old farm dog, Buster, barking at my heels. And what did I see? At least a dozen cars, parked neatly in rows across my east field, the very field where I planned to plant my sweet corn the following week. A woman, sporting a crisp blue blazer and a smile that could curdle milk, was directing traffic like she owned the place, clipboard in hand. "Hey, what in tarnation do you think you're doing?" I yelled, my voice cracking with a mix of sleepiness and fury. Buster added his own growls to the conversation. The woman, who I'd soon learn was named Brenda, turned, her perfectly coiffed hair barely moving, looking at me like I was a bug she was about to squash. "Good morning," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm Brenda Miller, president of the Evergreen Meadows HOA. I don't care if you're the Queen of England," I retorted, trying to keep my voice steady, though my insides were churning. "This is private property, my property, and you're trespassing." Brenda tilted her head, that condescending look perfected. "Oh, you must be confused. This area was designated as community overflow parking in our HOA bylaws," she stated, glancing at her clipboard. "Are you the Johnson who lives in the old farmhouse? We've been trying to reach you about joining our association." "Not confused in the least," I shot back, pulling out my phone to show her the property deed. "This land has been in my family for generations. We're not part of your development." Brenda's plastic smile faltered just a bit. "Well, this has been designated community parking for years. The previous board must have had an arrangement with your grandfather. My grandfather would have sooner burned the barn down than let you park here," I said firmly, my voice rising. "He taught me to value every single inch of this soil." By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, watching our standoff. Some looked embarrassed, others annoyed that their precious Saturday was being disrupted. One guy, decked out in golf gear, even yelled, "Hurry it up, we'll be late for the tournament." But then, I saw something that made me forget about the parking dispute entirely. A massive truck was backing up towards my back field, heading straight for the tomato plants I'd painstakingly nurtured for weeks. "Stop that truck, right now!" I screamed, breaking into a run. "You're destroying my crops!" The driver, thank goodness, slammed on the brakes just inches from my precious tomato rows. He rolled down his window, looking bewildered. "Lady at the entrance told me to park big vehicles back here." I whirled around to find Brenda right behind me, her face now flushed with anger. "Mr. Johnson, you're making a scene. We have a community golf tournament today, and this is the designated overflow area." "Says who?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Show me one document with my signature on it." "Our community bylaws clearly state—" "I'm not part of your community," I interrupted, my voice reaching a near shriek. "And you have exactly 1 hour to get these vehicles off my property before I call the sheriff and have them all towed, at the owner's expense." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone again. "Try me." Then, in a move that still makes my blood boil, she grabbed my wrist. "Listen to me carefully," she hissed. "Evergreen Meadows is home to the mayor, 2 city council members, and Judge Thompson. Who do you think the sheriff will side with? A bunch of respected community leaders, or one stubborn farmer? I yanked my arm away, my heart pounding. Take your hands off me, that's assault on top of trespassing. A few neighbors, having wandered closer, had overheard our exchange. An older gentleman stepped forward. Brenda, maybe we should just move the cars. If this is really his property, it's HOA property now, Brenda snapped, cutting him off. And you can all thank Mr. Johnson here when you're late for tea time. As if on cue, a shiny black SUV pulled up, and a slick-looking man in an expensive suit emerged. He walked straight to Brenda, completely ignoring me. Is there a problem? He asked. Brenda's demeanor changed instantly, relief flooding her face. Perfect timing, Robert. Our friend here seems confused about the parking arrangement. Robert turned to me, extending a hand. Robert Williams, HOA attorney. And you are the legal owner of the property you are all trespassing on, I replied, pointedly not taking his hand. His smile didn't falter. I understand your confusion. The easement agreement, allowing for community parking on this portion of land, was established years ago. I have copies back at my office. An easement I never signed, I insisted. Show me the paperwork right now. We can discuss this civilly, Robert said smoothly, his tone patronizing. Perhaps over coffee? There's no need for threats. I looked around at my invaded farm. Cars parked on my growing fields, entitled people staring at me like I was the problem. Something inside me snapped. A deep, primal anger that had been simmering for years, watching these developments encroach on our way of life, finally boiled over. You have 1 hour, I repeated, my voice now dangerously calm. Then I'm calling the sheriff, the local news, and every towing company in the county. I turned and marched back to the house, ignoring Brenda's threats echoing behind me. Inside, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial my phone. County Records Office, a friendly voice answered. This is Alex Johnson, at the old Miller Farm outside Evergreen Meadows. I need to check if there are any easements or agreements attached to my property. It's urgent. We close at noon today, the voice replied. Can you come right now? I glanced at my watch. 9:15 a.m. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I grabbed my keys, I looked out the window. Instead of moving cars, more were arriving. Brenda was directing a pickup truck to park right up against my tomato plants. I saw her glance towards my house, a smug smirk plastered on her face. This wasn't just about parking anymore. This was war. The county records office was eerily quiet on a Saturday morning, with only 2 employees working the weekend shift. The older gentleman at the desk looked up as I burst through the doors. I'm Alex Johnson. I called about property records for the Miller Farm. He nodded, holding out his hand. Frank Baker. Been working here 30 years. I knew your grandfather. This caught me by surprise. You did? Old man Silas was quite a character, Frank said with a chuckle, a twinkle in his eye. Smart as a whip, especially when it came to protecting what was his. A wave of warmth washed over me. He sure was. Frank led me to a small research room filled with dusty filing cabinets and ancient computers. Your property has an interesting history, he said, settling into a chair. The developers who built Evergreen Meadows tried to buy your grandfather's land for years. He always refused to sell. I know, I said proudly. Drove him crazy. Frank agreed, a knowing smile on his face. They even tried to have the land condemned at one point, claiming it was a public nuisance. My stomach tightened. That sounded eerily familiar. Frank pulled several thick folders from a cabinet. Let's see what we've got here. Property deeds, tax records, building permits. He spread the documents on the table, putting on a pair of reading glasses. After 20 minutes of searching, Frank sat back, a look of satisfaction on his face. Just as I thought. There's no easement for parking or public access on your property. Not a single document showing your grandfather ever agreed to let the HOA use his land. Relief washed over me so strong I felt weak. So they're definitely trespassing? Without a doubt, Frank confirmed. But there is something interesting here. He pulled out a yellowed document, its edges frayed. Your grandfather granted the power company an easement 30 years ago to run electrical infrastructure through the north corner of your property. I leaned forward, my heart starting to race. What does that mean exactly? Frank showed me a faded map. According to this, the main transformer supplying power to Evergreen Meadows is located on your land. Your grandfather negotiated this when the development was first built. The power company pays you $500 annually for access. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Frank's eyes twinkled. The HOA community's electricity runs through your property. Legally, you control access to that transformer. Can they move it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Not easily, Frank replied, shaking his head. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, require county approval, new permits, and probably a long service interruption. Plus, your permission to terminate the current easement. My mind was racing, calculating, strategizing. What about those payments? I've never received any money from the power company. Frank typed something into his computer, his brow furrowed. Payments have been going to a trust account in your grandfather's name since his passing. They've been accumulating. You should contact Pinewood Electric about updating the payment information. I left the records office with copies of everything, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger, excitement, and a touch of disbelief. This was really happening. On the drive home, I called Pinewood Electric's emergency line. This is Alex Johnson. I own the property where transformer station E245 is located. I need to speak with someone immediately about unauthorized access to this equipment. After being transferred twice, I finally reached the operations manager. Mr. Johnson, I'm Ron Carter. What seems to be the problem? Someone from Evergreen Meadows HOA is claiming rights to my property, I explained, my voice tight with controlled fury. I'm concerned about unauthorized access to the transformer station. That's a serious safety issue, Ron said, his voice instantly professional. That station serves over 200 homes in that development. Only authorized personnel should be anywhere near it. Exactly my concern, I replied. I'll be installing security cameras today and would like to confirm who has legitimate access. Only Pinewood Electric technicians with proper ID, Ron assured me. I can email you the maintenance schedule so you're aware when our people will be on site. Perfect. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had a plan. A bold, risky, possibly insane plan. But it was my plan. To my surprise, most of the cars were gone from my field. Only 3 remained, along with deep tire tracks and crushed plants, a testament to their arrogance and disregard. I surveyed the damage to my tomato field, taking photos with my phone. Several plants were completely flattened, representing weeks of work and future income, destroyed. Inside my house, I printed the documents from the county office and organized them in a folder. Then, I found the old property surveys my grandfather had kept, showing exact boundaries and landmarks. Just as I finished, a knock came at my door. It was Brenda standing there with Robert Williams, the HOA attorney. 2 other people stood behind them, a middle-aged man with a stern expression and a young woman holding a clipboard. Mr. Johnson, Brenda began, her tone falsely pleasant. We've brought the parking agreement for you to sign. Just a formality, really. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. No cars on my property by the end of the day, I said, my voice flat, and I expect payment for the damage to my crops. Robert stepped forward, his polished shoes gleaming. That's not how this works. The HOA board has already voted to designate this area for community use. We're simply asking for your cooperation. And if I don't cooperate? The stern-looking man spoke up. I'm Gary Thompson, City Councilman. This community represents significant tax revenue for our city. Surely, we can reach a reasonable arrangement that benefits everyone. The young woman with the clipboard looked uncomfortable. The environmental impact study for additional parking within Evergreen Meadows would take months, she mumbled. This is really the only viable option for community events. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that seemed to unnerve them. I've just come from the county records office, I said, holding up my folder. There is no easement for parking on my property, never has been. Brenda waved her hand dismissively. Old paperwork can be updated. I've also discovered something interesting about your community's power supply, I continued, showing them the easement documents. The transformer serving your entire neighborhood? It's on my land. Their faces changed instantly. Brenda's smile disappeared. Robert straightened his tie. The councilman took a small step backward. I'm officially revoking access for non-essential maintenance until we resolve this situation, I announced, my voice gaining strength. I've already spoken with Pinewood Electric about unauthorized personnel near their equipment. You can't do that, Brenda sputtered, her voice rising in panic. People have medical equipment, refrigerators. I'm not cutting your power, I clarified, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm just exercising my property rights, the same way you're trying to exercise yours over my farm. The councilman cleared his throat. Let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can work something out. I agree, I said calmly. Here's my proposal. All vehicles off my property by 5 p.m., full compensation for crop damage, and a signed acknowledgement that my land is not HOA property. Or what? Brenda challenged, though her voice had lost its edge. I held up the power easement document. Or I exercise my right to deny access for scheduled maintenance next week. Hot summer coming up. Would be a shame if the system couldn't handle the load because it couldn't be properly serviced. They left in a hurry, huddled together in urgent conversation as they walked to their cars. I watched from my window as they drove away, feeling both victorious and uneasy. This wasn't over. People like Brenda didn't give up easily. My phone rang. It was Ron from Pinewood Electric. Mr. Johnson, I've been told there might be an access issue with transformer E245. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. There's been a misunderstanding with the local HOA. They seem to think they have rights to my property. That's concerning, Ron replied, his voice serious. That transformer is critical infrastructure. Any access issues could affect service reliability for hundreds of homes. I understand, I said. I don't want anyone to lose power. I just need the HOA to respect my property rights. Tell you what, Ron offered. I can come out Monday morning to inspect the transformer and discuss optimal access arrangements. Sometimes a little official presence helps clear things up. I thanked him and hung up, feeling slightly more optimistic. But my relief was short-lived. Through my window, I spotted Brenda's car returning, followed by 3 police cruisers, lights flashing. This fight was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. I stood frozen beside my transformer, watching as Brenda pointed at me, yelling to the power company worker. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. She was trying to frame me. That's him, she shouted, her voice shrill. He was just tampering with it. I just got here, I said calmly to the worker, whose name tag read Dave. The panel was already open. Look at the security cameras on my barn, if you don't believe me. Dave looked confused, caught between us. Ma'am, we don't have any reports of tampering. Check it, Brenda demanded, her eyes blazing. He threatened to cut our power yesterday. Dave approached the transformer cautiously and examined the panel. This has definitely been tampered with, he said, his voice grim. "The access lock is broken." He turned to me, suspicion clouding his eyes. "Sir, did you do this?" "Absolutely not," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I just noticed it myself and was about to call it in. My security cameras will show I've been in my house all morning until 5 minutes ago." "Convenient that you mention cameras," Brenda sneered. "Where are they? I don't see any." "They're being installed tomorrow," I admitted, a wave of frustration washing over me, but I had nothing to do with this. In fact, I paused, a realization dawning on me. "Dave, when was the last time an official power company employee checked this transformer?" "According to our records, not for at least 3 months," Dave said, checking his tablet. I turned to Brenda, my voice dripping with accusation. "How did you know the panel was open? You drove straight here and pointed it. How did you know the panel was open? You drove straight here and pointed it out." Her face flushed a mottled red. I noticed it earlier when you were trespassing on my property," I finished for her, my voice laced with icy calm. "Or when someone you sent was breaking the lock." Dave looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating tension. "I'm going to need to file a report about this." "Please do," I said, my voice firm. "And I'd like a copy, along with confirmation that no one from Evergreen Meadows has authorization to access this equipment." Brenda, defeated for the moment, stormed back to her SUV without another word, her perfectly coiffed hair finally showing signs of disarray. Dave spent the next 30 minutes securing the transformer and taking photos. He gave me his card and promised to have his supervisor call me that night. Oliver Jenkins, the lawyer Frank had recommended, returned my call later that evening. After hearing my increasingly unbelievable story, he agreed to represent me. "Classic HOA overreach," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "They target properties they want to control, especially ones that don't fit their aesthetic vision. The good news is, you've got leverage with that transformer easement." A week passed without incident. A week of anxious waiting, punctuated by small victories. I filed formal complaints about the trespassing and tampering, installed the security cameras, and began working with Oliver to draft a cease and desist letter to the HOA. Then early Monday morning, my alarm system jolted me awake at 4:30 a.m. The security app on my phone showed movement at my east fence. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, my heart sinking as I watched the live feed. Someone was cutting through my newly repaired fence with bolt cutters. I called the sheriff immediately and rushed outside, phone in hand, recording video. By the time I reached the fence, 3 sections had been cut open, and a line of cars was already pulling into my field. "This is private property," I shouted, my voice shaking with rage and a touch of fear. "You're trespassing." A woman in the first car rolled down her window, a smug look on her face. "We have permission from the HOA. Check your email if you don't believe me." One by one, each driver showed me the same email, from Brenda, authorizing them to park in the community overflow lot on my property. The email claimed the dispute had been officially resolved. When Sheriff Reynolds finally arrived, 20 minutes later, a dozen cars were already parked on my land, a scene of utter, infuriating defiance. He looked uncomfortable, almost apologetic, as I showed him the cut fence and my videos. "I'm sorry, but there's not much I can do right now," he explained, after speaking with several drivers. "The HOA has submitted documents to the county showing this area is designated community parking." "What documents? Those are forgeries," I protested, showing him my property deed on my phone, my voice rising in desperation. "Look," he sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair, "this is becoming a civil matter. You've got conflicting claims and paperwork. Take it up in court. I can't just tow all these people's cars based on your word against the HOA's." After he left, I called Oliver, who promised to file for an emergency injunction that very day. But the courts, I knew, moved slowly. And meanwhile, more cars kept coming, a steady stream of arrogant entitlement. Fuming, I walked to Sarah's house. Sarah, my neighbor from Evergreen Meadows, had always been friendly, a voice of reason in a sea of manicured lawns and artificial smiles. She invited me in for coffee, her face etched with concern. "I need to show you something," she said, once we were seated at her kitchen table. She pulled out her tablet. "I'm on the HOA email list. What they're doing, it isn't right." She opened her email and showed me a series of messages between Brenda, Robert, and other board members. They discussed strategies for annexing the farm, for forcing compliance through escalating pressure. My blood ran cold. "Keep scrolling," Sarah said grimly. The next email contained something that made my stomach drop. A scanned document with what appeared to be my grandfather's signature on an HOA agreement from 15 years ago. "That's fake," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "My grandfather would never have signed this." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice low. "Look at the date, April 2009. Your grandfather was still the owner, yes?" "Yes, until he passed away 3 years ago, but that's not his signature. I've seen enough of his documents to know." Sarah nodded. "I thought so. Brenda's husband works at a printing company. He has access to equipment that could easily produce this." She scrolled to another email, this one from yesterday. "It gets worse. They're holding an emergency board meeting tonight, inviting a special guest, Brenda's cousin who works for the power company. They're discussing options to permanently resolve the transformer issue." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. "They're planning to reroute the electricity to bypass your property entirely," she said, her voice heavy with dread. "Her cousin says it's expensive but doable. Once that happens, you lose all your leverage." I sat back, stunned by the sheer audacity, the ruthless determination of these people. "Why are you showing me this? Won't you get in trouble?" Sarah sighed, a weary look in her eyes. "I bought my house here because it backed up to your farm. I loved seeing the open fields, the crops, not another cookie-cutter house. They've been trying to force out anything that doesn't fit their perfect community vision for years." My phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Judge Henderson granted our emergency hearing. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring all documentation." I showed Sarah the message. "Will you testify about these emails, if needed?" She hesitated, only for a brief moment before nodding. "Yes, this has gone too far." As I walked home, I noticed a power company truck parked near my property line. Brenda's cousin was already getting to work. I had less than 24 hours to stop them. Back at my house, I gathered every document I had. Property deeds, easement agreements, photos of the damage, security videos, everything. Then I made one more call, to the local news station. "I have a story about HOA corruption, forged documents, and property rights," I told the reporter, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and determination. "And it all comes to a head at a public meeting tonight." My heart pounded like a drum as I stood outside the packed community center. Through the window, I could see Brenda, waving her hands excitedly, pointing at huge photos of my farm, now marked with parking spaces and walkways. People were nodding along, completely fooled by her carefully crafted lies. I clutched my folder of evidence, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. The room went silent as I walked in. Brenda froze mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open like a caught fish. "Well, look who decided to join us," she said, regaining her composure, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We were just discussing the community improvements planned for that eyesore you call a farm." Several people laughed, a nervous, uneasy sound. I felt my face burn, but I kept walking straight to the front of the room. Actually, I'm glad you're all here, I said loudly, my voice cutting through the murmurs. There's something you all deserve to know about what your HOA leadership has been doing with your money and your trust. Brenda rushed towards me, her perfectly manicured nails practically digging into her palms. He's trespassing. Someone call security. An older man in the front row stood up. Let him speak, Brenda. I want to hear what he has to say. Others nodded in agreement. I could see Brenda's perfect smile cracking at the edges, the carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. Fine, you have 2 minutes, she snapped, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. I connected my laptop to their projector, ignoring her outburst. I think you'll want to give me more than 2 minutes once you see this. The first slide appeared. A copy of my property deed and survey map, showing clear, undeniable boundaries. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. As you can see, I said, my voice gaining confidence, my farm has never been part of Evergreen Meadows. I've never signed any HOA agreement. I clicked to the next slide, the forged document with my grandfather's supposedly signature that Sarah had uncovered. This is a forgery. Your board created this. My grandfather passed away 3 years ago, but this document is dated just 6 months ago. The room erupted. People were gasping, murmuring, shaking their heads in disbelief. Brenda lunged for my laptop, but I moved it away just in time. He's making this up, she shouted, her face turning a frightening shade of red. This troublemaker has been breaking our rules since he moved in. I calmly clicked to the next slide. The emails between Brenda and Robert, discussing how to force compliance through escalating pressure and make his life miserable until he gives in. These are your HOA emails, I explained, my voice ringing with righteous anger, discussing the plan to harass me off my property, and this one shows Brenda authorizing $30,000 of your dues for legal consultations about taking my land. An angry buzz filled the room. People were standing now, pointing at Brenda and the board members seated at the front table. Where did you get those? Robert demanded, his lawyerly composure finally cracking, his face pale. That's not important, I replied, my voice steady. What's important is that your leadership has been lying to you. A woman stood up near the back. My husband and I paid a $500 fine last month for having a vegetable garden that was too visible from the street. Meanwhile, you're spending our money on this? Others joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage, sharing similar stories of petty fines and arbitrary rules. The room grew louder with each passing second, a tide of anger swelling against the HOA leadership. Brenda grabbed the microphone, her voice shrill and desperate. Everyone calm down. This is a complicated legal matter that you don't understand. We're acting in the community's best interest. I clicked to my final slide, the county records showing the electrical easement. One last thing you should know, I said, raising my voice above the din. The main transformer that powers your entire community sits on my property. Your homes get electricity because my grandfather allowed the power company to place equipment on our land. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Is that true? Someone finally asked, their voice hushed. Absolutely, I replied, my voice clear and strong. I've confirmed it with the county records office and the power company. I have no desire to interfere with your electricity. I just want to be left alone to run my farm in peace. Thomas, a gray-haired man I recognized as living on the edge of the development, stood up. I've had enough of this, Brenda. Is any of this true? Have you been lying to us? Brenda's face twisted with rage, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. This meeting is over. Everyone needs to leave immediately. Not until we get answers, shouted Sarah, her voice ringing out from the back of the room. Robert leaned over and whispered something in Brenda's ear. She pushed him away, her voice shaking with fury. I don't care about legal consequences, she shrieked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I've worked too hard to let some dirt farmer ruin everything." The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Brenda realized her mistake too late. "What I meant was," she started, but people were already shouting questions. "Have you been targeting other homeowners too? What else have you been spending our money on? Did you really forge documents?" Brenda grabbed her purse and headed for the side door. "This meeting is adjourned. The board will issue a statement tomorrow." Thomas blocked her path. "No, Brenda, I think we need a vote. Right now. All in favor of suspending the current board pending an investigation, raise your hands." Almost every hand in the room shot up, a sea of righteous anger and betrayal. Brenda's face went from red to purple to a sickly shade of white. "You can't do this. It's against the bylaws." "Actually," I said quietly, stepping forward, "your bylaws allow for emergency removal of board members in cases of suspected financial impropriety. Section 8, paragraph 4. Brenda stared at me, her eyes filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number and spoke into it while staring directly at me. "Do it now," she said clearly, her voice dripping with venom. "All of it." 3 seconds later, the lights went out. Emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the shocked faces. Brenda's laugh, a chilling, unhinged sound, cut through the darkness. "See what happens when you challenge me? Your precious farm controls our electricity. Let's see how you like it when—" Her voice was cut off by the sound of sirens approaching rapidly in the distance. Screams filled the dark room. My phone lit up, the power company calling. "Hello?" "Yes, I'm at the HOA meeting right now," I answered loudly, putting it on speakerphone so everyone could hear. "Mr. Johnson, we caught someone messing with your transformer. A woman in a blazer. Our cameras got everything. Police are on their way." Brenda's face turned white as a ghost. "He's lying," she shrieked, but residents were already surrounding her, phones recording, a wall of righteous anger closing in. The doors burst open as police officers entered, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Robert tried sneaking out the back, but ran straight into Sheriff Reynolds. The local news vans pulled up outside. Sarah had called them earlier, just in case. 2 weeks later, I watched Brenda and Robert on TV, being charged with forgery, trespassing, and attempted vandalism. My farm was now famous, locally, as the HOA Battlers Victory Garden. The new HOA President Thomas met me at my fence line, his expression apologetic. "We voted to help rebuild your damaged crops. Maybe we could work together instead of against each other." I smiled, shaking his hand. "I'd like that. Sometimes, good neighbors just need good fences and clear boundaries." This story highlights the importance of knowing your rights, standing up for what you believe in, and the power of community when faced with injustice. Even seemingly small battles can have significant consequences, and perseverance, even in the face of overwhelming odds, can lead to victory. It also serves as a cautionary tale about the potential for abuse of power within organizations like HOAs and the importance of transparency and accountability. What do you think of Alex's stand against the HOA? Have you ever had a similar experience? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.